Today we're going to go back to the 1800s where we get on a voyage with Lewis and Clark in the game Discoveries. What do I think? How does it play? We'll get it to the table and we'll let you know. See you in a minute. So in Discoveries, we're going to be taking a trip through the untamed wilderness. Setup is fairly simple. You put out the main board. On each side you're going to put tribe cards and discovery cards. Now these are the same card, but they're printed differently on the backs and fronts. This section again is for tribe cards, and these large areas here I think honestly are a bit too big, but it's a nice pretty picture. But they're for your discarded dice, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then you're going to set out your characters. You'll pick the different explorers, and you'll take their set of colored dice, and you'll take a set of gray dice based on the number of players. There are 30 dice altogether, which represents the 30 men that went on the core of Discovery with Lewis and Clark. So I thought that was kind of a neat little thematic thing to bring into it. Also, depending on how many people are playing, that's how many of these cards are going to be in the deck. Now for 2 players like we would only have 30 cards in here. I left them all there just because. Each of you then gets and reveals 1 discovery card, and discovery cards allow you to go on a journey based on, anyway, it's a dice rolls, we'll get to it in a minute. So each of you gets a random discovery card. It'll give you victory points, or it'll give you TPs or fish or other icons that are going to be useful for when the end game comes. You get this little score pad, and it'll help you to total up how many points you have, and that's what really this game is. It's about getting the most victory points before the end of the game. Now you take your dice, you roll them, and you put them into this area called your dice stock, and these dice allow you to perform certain actions. Now one of the things I like about this is you're not limited to your own dice. You're actually going to not only be able to collect these gray dice on occasion, which we'll explain in a second here, but you can also take your opponent's dice. But you got to be careful, because if you plan on using them, they might be able to take them back before you get to, and it can mess up your entire plan. But in order to win, again, you count your points on your discovery cards, points for your animals, plants, and so on, as well as your TP rank, which is supposed to represent how much you know about the American Indians. So, on your turn, you get to choose one of these many different actions on your player board. Now, how do you know which one you can choose? Well, that's a real good question. I'm glad you asked. You know because you have these die faces up, and you are allowed to use 1 die face at a time. So in other words, if I'm going to use this horseshoe, I must use all of, or I can only use the horseshoes. So if I want to put one here, and this question mark means it can be anything. It doesn't matter what it is. So let's just go through this whole board while we're looking. This one says any die, and you can pick a new destiny card. You can exchange, our discovery card, you can exchange them. Now the arrow at the top says as soon as you use it, the die goes into the pool, into the used pool. And that's what we were talking about earlier. If you want to pick up your dice, you can actually pick up your opponent's. This one, you have to have the Indian head, and it says you can pick a friendly tribe. And again, that will give you possible bonus actions, as well as the TP points for the end of the game. You're going to want to get a lot of those bonus, well, not a lot, but you're going to want to get some of those bonus actions, because it does get difficult to do the discovery if you don't have these additional actions. They really do help a lot. But again, that's something you'll learn as you play. Let's see, so this one is a horseshoe and a journal entry. That's this die with the writing on it. And what it does is it says you get 2 water. And that says I can cross 2 waters on the discovery thing. And you'd be wanting to look at the one you have up here. Before you do any of these discoveries, you want to make sure that you have everything lined up. Because if you don't have enough things set out, you can't complete the discovery. So for instance, if I only had this, and let's just do this one. When I went to set out my journal to finish this, well, I would have 3, 4, 5 of the rivers that I could cross. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's just enough for here. But if instead I were over here on the mountains, well, then I wouldn't have enough to complete it. Because I don't have enough even here. 1, and then 1 mountain, 2, 3, 4, and that's not enough to do this. So you have to be careful when you're setting up, planning your actions. But again, is why these things are so important. Because this, like this one here, is a 3 river or 1 mountain. So it's an either or. This is an additional 3 mountains plus 2 rivers that you can explore. They can be really powerful if you can get them. This allows you to spend any die you want. You can turn the faces of 2 dice to any other face. Useful for when you're trying to complete these darn things. But remember, you can only pick 1 die face at a time when you're playing. You can't play the horseshoes and then play the feet on the same turn. You gotta only pick 1. That's one of the limits of it. So yeah, you can do any of those actions on your turn, or, and not both, or you can pick up dice. Now, where do you get dice? Well, you can either pick up all of your colored dice from your board and from your tribe cards, or you can pick up all of the dice from one side of this. One side or the other. So in other words, if you have 2 dice here and your opponent has 3 dice here, you can actually say, I'm taking them all, roll them, and then they now all become part of your thing. The problem is the opponent can later say, I'm picking up all of my dice, and they can take them back before you get to use them. So you gotta be quick, and you gotta think a bit on how you want to spend somebody else's dice. Discoveries are one of the main ways you're going to get victory points, because they do have a lot of points on them. But in order to really do the more difficult discoveries, you're going to need the help of the Native Americans, of the American Indians, however you want to say it, I don't care. But at the end of your turn, you'll put out any new cards that are on the empty slots, and that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask. But the game is, it's not that difficult to learn, but it has a lot of strategy that you're going to want to take the time to figure out. You're going to want to dive into this and really think about what your turn is going to be. And that can be a problem for those that have what they call analysis paralysis, where they think overly much on a different, on what they want their card to be. Now, I wanted to make sure that I got that right. Yeah. You need to take all dice, regardless of color, from the right, all dice from the left, or take as many of your dice from anywhere that you can, that you want. Yes, okay, we were right there. But like I said, if you're the person that is okay with others taking a long time to think, or if you're used to strategy games, that's what this is. It's more of a strategy style game where you got to plan out your moves 5-6 turns in advance. But if that's what you're into, I think you're going to like Discoveries. Personally, I like it, or else I wouldn't keep it. And I highly recommend you run out and grab yourself a copy. Until next time, have fun.